Welcome, world, for watching my podcast. It's just different with Ty, where I talk about social and political issues. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you get updated on the latest videos. I have three special guests with me, and they have a very interesting story that's going on right now as we speak. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the chairman, Omali Yeshitela. I have brother Jesse Nevel, and I have sister Penny Hess.
Welcome to It's Just Different with your host, Ty.
How are y'all doing this evening?
Splendid, comrade. How are you? Uhuru?
I'm blessed.
You're great.
Yes. So I'm gonna start this off real quick, and actually I just dive right straight to it. And Chairman, I want you to answer this question. First, tell the world, for those that may not know, who is the Uhuru? Who are they? What are they? So the audience can get grasp an idea on who Uhuru is.
For lack of a better way of saying it, that Uhuru movement, we are 21st century Garveyites. We are people who participate in a historical continuum for the liberation of African people who've lived under savage, foreign, alien domination, not just here in this country, but have been forcibly dispersed throughout the world. It's something that started some 600 years ago. And so it is a movement that is under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, which is a party of the African working class, because we've concluded that it is the African workers who create all the value that we see happening throughout this country and much of the world. And that we have to have a society where those who are involved in social development, production of value, wealth, end up being the ones who, the leaders who collectively and socially will determine what that world is going to look like. And so the African People's Socialist Party is the leader of the Uhuru movement. And as I said, the Uhuru movement is a continuum of a movement, a revolutionary project that was begun by Marcus Garvey more than 100 years ago.
Thank you. So this ain't your first time, Chairman, that you basically publicly been out on the platform. You was known, and I'm gonna let you, go on that because you can probably explain better than I can. Going back a few decades ago, where you was nationally known for an event happening back in 1982, I believe that year. So can you talk about that real quick, sir?
Well, we can go back, excuse me, to 1966, which is, I was with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. That was the organization that introduced the slogan, Demand Black Power, into contemporary history. And it was SNCC, it was with SNCC that I snatched down a mural, an 8 by 10 foot racist mural that had been put on the wall of the City Hall, the seat of local government in St. Petersburg, Florida, that depicted African people in humiliating and degrading ways that had come to be acceptable in white colonial society to the whole world. And so after writing letters and talking to the government about removing that mural, and this mural, as I said, was at the seat of government there, and African people at that time, everybody went to that place to pay their water bills, and everybody went to City Hall meetings. They had to pass that humiliating caricature of Black people, and they wouldn't remove it. So a SNCC organization, a SNCC demonstration that we had at the City Hall resulted in me and one or two other people snatching that mural down, marching through the streets of St. Petersburg. It was the first direct action Black Power event that happened in this country, in fact. And it was just a few months after that event that we made at the local government city hall that the Black Panther Party marched into Sacramento at the state government with a demonstration with the guns and what have you. So we kicked off a whole era of resistance. It was the colonized people rising up in a way that was extraordinarily uncomfortable for white people, for white power who were unaccustomed to seeing Black people who were protesting without being on our knees and simply praying and singing "We Shall Overcome." So it was a whole new era of struggle that was a part and parcel of the struggle of colonized people all around the world. It was happening everywhere, not just in St. Petersburg, Florida. So they arrested me, charged me with 11 offenses, ended up one of those offenses resulting in a 5-year prison sentence. I ended up spending something like 2.5 years of that in and out of prison, being bailed out, being rearrested, that kind of thing. Finally having it thrown out by the Supreme Court and then being tried again for the same thing. And then this time getting a 3-year prison sentence. So it was in and out of prison a lot during that era, and then subsequently as well.
Wow.
So this is the Uhuru movement. So we built throughout the United States. We built the newspaper. We have the longest existing, consistently published revolutionary Black publication in the world, the Burning Spear newspaper. We have built independent economic institutions. We started off doing that. That's part of the whole thing of negating the colonial domination. Black people, like all other dignified people, have to have the ability to feed, clothe, and house ourselves. We've been on that mission, and that's why we have been under attack all this time. That's why the Black Power movement has been under attack. That's why the struggle against colonialism comes under attack in the United States, in Palestine, in Nicaragua, Venezuela, all those other, Cuba, all those other places where people are determined to be free. Yeah.
Wow, right there. Thank you for explaining that. Brother Jesse, I'm curious to ask. I really want to know this, and we briefly touched on this. As someone that is white, right? What was it about Chairman Omali's message that resonated with you to where you said, this is a movement I have to join and fully commit and dedicate myself to?
Uhuru, I really appreciate the question, and I just want to thank you for having me on this program. It's very much an honor to be in this interview with you, Comrade Ty, and with, of course, Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Chairwoman Penny Hess. And I appreciate the question about what it was that resonated with me as a white person in terms of the message and the theory and the vision of African internationalism that Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party presents. And I think, first of all, it was the first time that I had ever heard an explanation of the way the world is that made any sense. It was the first honest scientific explanation I had ever been given for why the vast majority of the people on the planet Earth live in hideous conditions of near starvation and abject forced impoverishment, and meanwhile those of us in the white community live a completely different life. And you get, as white people, we hear all these bogus explanations growing up for why that is, that we're blessed and this and that, and it never made any sense. And to finally be able to have African internationalism break it down that there is a system called colonialism, and that this system came into being through the assault on Africa and the enslavement of African human beings and the genocide against the native people of this land and the theft of their land. And that's what brought white people out of feudalism and poverty in Europe to become the world's wealthiest and most powerful people at the expense of everybody else. It was the first time it was like this unspoken truth about the world that Chairman Omali Yeshitela and African internationalism just put into words so perfectly and so in such a powerful way. But not only that, it showed the way forward. It showed the way forward to changing this world, that, we don't have to just accept it and it's just the way it is, and to try to find small ways to improve it, but that there can actually be revolutionary transformation led by African people, led by the African working class, and that white people have a role in it. I think that's ultimately the thing that brought me into this, to learn about this organization called the African People's Solidarity Committee, that Chairwoman Penny, can tell us about the founding conference in 1976 that the chairman held, that Chairwoman Penny attended, and that has existed for almost 50 years, that gives white people a place in a principled relationship of solidarity with the African Revolution under the leadership of the African working class. So it's an incredibly inspiring vision, and it's optimistic. It's revolutionary optimism. It shows that the world can be changed, and human beings can change it and are changing it, led by the colonized and African working class of the world. And white people have a role and a responsibility in that.
Thank you. Sister Penny Hess. I want to ask you the same question, because although he brilliantly explained it, I also want to hear from you as well, as a white person and a white woman, as to what resonated with you when the chairman spoke, and what made you say, "Hey, I want to be a part of this as well."
Uhuru, well, thank you for having us on, and I am also very, very honored to be here. And I just, of course, want to salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela. It's great to be on this with you. It's an honor, and just really appreciate the things that Comrade Jesse was just saying. It was very well said. I first heard Chairman Omali Yeshitela speak in Louisville, Kentucky in 1976, and I just felt that it was so compelling what the chairman was saying of, why African people, on the one hand, have been colonized and oppressed, and why the struggle is not against racism, but is against colonialism. And I thought that was very, that just made so much sense, because when you are struggling against racism, so the chairman has said, you never know if did I defeat racism in my head? I don't know, and maybe that's not even possible for white people in that isolated kind of way. But the fact that it was 1976, it was in many ways after the defeat of the height of the Black Power movement, the African Revolution of the 60s. But yet everything that the chairman was saying was, it was scientific. It was saying that African people have to lead this struggle, that the African people are fighting for national liberation, fighting for Africa, like the chairman said, the Marcus Garvey movement, fighting for power, not to be liked by white people. That was not the goal. And that, as Comrade Jesse said, there was a role for white people as a front of the African Revolution, but not controlling it, not in leadership, but uniting with the right of African people to be free, to have Africa return to them, to have all the stolen resources, and for white people to also be fighting for socialism, for an end to this system, built at the expense of African people and indigenous people and colonized people around the world, for the benefit of a few white people. That there's a way out of this situation, and it's under the leadership of the African Revolutionary Movement. I also want to say that I had the opportunity, the honor of being able to attend a founding conference of APSC in St. Petersburg, Florida in 1976 at the headquarters of the African People's Socialist Party. And that also was very, very winning to me to see the discipline of the party, the seriousness of the party, that this was, this was a very, very serious, very, just a very disciplined endeavor that the African People's Socialist Party led, and every single person was that was a member of the party or part of the Uhuru movement was also very winning. Just to see the seriousness with which members of the party approached this question of the freedom and liberation of African people. And I just felt that I was joining something worldwide, something far greater than myself, and something that would and could win based on the science of it and the actual organization of it that was making it, that could make it happen. And so it seemed tangible and just, it was just very electric at that conference. And the chairman gave a presentation that lasted for 13 hours on, the whole understanding on dialectical materialism and African internationalism and just, just everybody at the conference was just rapt, I guess you would say, just amazing to begin to, understand the science of how the world works and how things got to be the way they are, why white people have power and African people are colonized. And it was just incredibly winning to me. And as Comrade Jesse said, it makes sense. It's scientific. And I'm still here. I mean, African people aren't free. The world hasn't changed. How could I leave when it's not done yet? It's getting there. The African people and oppressed and colonized people are winning. And this system is in a crisis, as the chairman always teaches us. So it's not over, and it has to be won, or I would, just be fearful of what this world would be without Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And this is, anyway, it's been a really, really powerful journey, and it's been an honor to be part of it all this time under the leadership of the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party.
Thank you, Sister Hess, for explaining that. Chairman Omali, you have been known, like I said, for me, as someone that's been very outspoken and talking about reparations. Mm-hmm. Truthfully, honestly, in your opinion, do you think that African people, African Americans, Black Americans, do you think Black people in this country will ever receive reparations in this country? And what do Black people need to do to see that plan comes to fruition?
Well, first of all, I want to say that not only do we talk a lot, and have I talked a lot about reparations, from a very early period of time, I saw, and so that the African People's Socialist Party, the reparations question is a function of revolution. It's not, the objective is not just to get some money. So when we talk about reparations, we haven't always meant the same thing that many other Africans, or white people for that matter, have meant when the reparations question was raised. In the first place, I want to contextualize the fact that when we really began to push the reparation question, it was in late 1970s, early 1980. 1981, we held the first tribunal on reparations for Black people in this country. and it used international law to hold a tribunal. It had panel of international judges from various parts of Africa, from South America, from within the United States, and what have you. And it was a time after which the Black Revolution had been come under fierce murder. In 1960s saw the murder of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. At the time, the Black Panther Party was under severe assault and had been nearly destroyed by 1982. For all practical purposes, it had been neutralized, more or less. And so you had, in the wake of that, because the Black struggle in this country had been a defining issue for a long period of time. Everything that we've come to know as democracy in the United States is something that was brought into the surface, brought into existence by the struggle of Black people in this country. It was we who fought for universal suffrage so that people could vote. It was we, the struggle of Black people, that not only that took white women out of the kitchen and white homosexuals out of the closet and what have you. It was a struggle of Black people that was the very foundation ideologically and politically of this country. So, but it had been smashed. And smashing the struggle of Black people militarily with the assassinations, massive jailings. We don't know how many people were in prison at that time. We know that the Attorney General of the United States had determined that by 1979, the Black Panther Party would be destroyed. We know it was December 1969, that Fred Hampton was killed. We know it was in 1969, a year following the murder of Malcolm X, that the attack, the Panther 21 in New York, 21 members of the Black Panther Party with more than 100 charges against them were thrown into prison in a trial that lasted for 2 years. So all kinds of havoc was wreaked, and I was in and out of prison so many times, in jail so many times it's hard to even calculate them today. And so in the wake of this political attack, because the United States government, this system was incapable of engaging in an ideological and political discussion or debate with the Black Revolution. It couldn't do it. There's no way it could handle that. So what the government did, as it does with every colonial question around the world, it attacked us militarily. And then following up on that, as that was going on, this attack was happening from a variety of white forces, from the white left, if you will call it, who was showing us telling us how everything we did was wrong, and so they had the right solutions, etc., for Black people. From white intellectuals and these institutions of higher education learning. So that what we began to hear all the time was that Black people were responsible for our own misery, that we are the ones who brought the misery upon us, and that the system and white people were just getting tired of having to carry Black people living off the welfare, the goodness of the good hearts of white people, etc., and white people just being exhausted by taking care of us. So that was had a profound impact on the consciousness, the morale of Black people and all the white world, including, as I said, the white left, and especially white left, making various kinds of charges against us. So we saw that to do this reparations issue, and we wanted everybody we could win, all the Black people. We didn't care if it was a church. We didn't care if it was NAACP. We didn't care, as some of the great Black nationalist leaders at the time talking about, we have to be for reparations so we can get our teeth fixed. That's what the kind of logic they were using to try to spread to the masses. Our thing is that the moment that we succeed in raising effectively the demand for reparations, then what we do is take Black people off of the defensive. And then we've initiated offense, because if you owe us reparation, why? That becomes the critical question. Not how much money we gonna get, not what we gonna do with it. Why? Why do you owe us reparations? So groups that didn't touch reparations before we raised the question, who for whatever reasons were unable or unwilling to do it, now everybody talks about reparations. It's on the agenda. And some people who talk about reparations say, well, what you going to do with it? What we going to do with it? Who's going to get it? They don't even understand the distance we've come from that place where we were on this defensive, and reparations out of the question. In fact, when we first started doing reparations, the white left called us a lunatic fringe. Anybody talking about reparations, we had to be crazy, a lunatic fringe. But now We said in 1980, we said that we're going to make reparations a household word. We had the first tribunal on reparations, world tribunal on reparations in 1982 in New York, in Brooklyn, New York. As I said, we had international panel of judges, and then for 11 years succeeding that, we had tribunals in various other places around the United States raising the reparations question. And today, we have organized through the solidarity movement that Jesse and Penny represent. There are white people who are working in 140 some odd cities now talking about reparations, have been doing it for a while. We have actual concrete programs on the ground. So reparations happen. It's not just a wish list. List that we have. We have more than 50 economic institutions. Many of them are contributed to by white people paying reparations, not charity, reparations. They're saying that we accept our responsibility for the conditions that white people have contributed to, that Black people have to experience. So it's a real issue, and it's a revolutionary function for us. So we have our own perspective about it. We are getting reparations. In the final analysis, we have to take power over our lives and not assume there's going to be a point where we're going to see, and we have already begun to see it, certain cities and states who are talking about, give Black people some reparations. They want to offer that as a payoff, right? They want to say they will decide what kind of stuff that they'll give us and who should get it and stuff like that. So that's right on. Because once you open the door to the question, the door is open, period. So no matter, we want to allow them to determine what it means. For them to have to say it is to say that, yes, we committed these offenses against Black people. It's our responsibility to build a movement that overwhelms any kind of opposition toward our ultimate aim, which has to be self-determination, self-government, and the ability of Black people to be in charge of our own affairs. We have to be able to feed, clothe, and house ourselves and not depend on welfare, slavery, or any other kind of colonial control over our people. I hope that was helpful.
No, yes, it definitely was. Definitely insightful. Good. I appreciate you for that. Good. Brother Jesse, I want to ask you the same question, but I'm going to change it up a little bit. Again, I want to show, just point it out. So as a, we had this conversation a little bit earlier, as a white person, again, when a white person talking about reparations, do you yourself truly believe that Black people in this America are owed reparations? And on top of that, what type of ridicule have you faced from other white people that do not agree with your point of view?
Oh, sorry. Yes, absolutely. 100% believe that reparations are owed to African people in this country and around the world. And I just really want to appreciate the previous response from Chairman Omali Yeshitela and acknowledge the incredible historic significance of the leadership of the chairman in defining the question of reparations to African people as a revolutionary demand and making reparations a household word and actually creating this campaign to take reparations out of the classrooms and legal kinds of discussions and making it a demand of the masses of African people, and also extending the reparations struggle into the white community through the creation of the African People's Solidarity Committee, the work that Chairwoman Penny and other members of APSC have been involved in since the mid 70s to take this question of reparations into the white community under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. And we believe as the Solidarity Movement that reparations is the most essential question that we have to deal with as white people. It's the most important thing that white people have to reckon with, have to come to terms with, have to unite with, if we are going to have any kind of progressive or socialist or anti-imperialist or revolutionary stand. And that, as Chairman Omali Yeshitela has explained, reparations is about repairing the damage of hundreds of years of the colonial mode of production, the enslavement of African people, the colonization of Africa, the looting of Africa, and the genocide against the native people and the ongoing theft of resources and labor and life from African people internationally and within the colonial borders of the US that creates the foundation for all of the wealth and resources and opportunity and democratic rights that white people as the colonizers take for granted and have access to. And reparations as a demand and as a revolutionary practice for white people calls on us to really face this reality, to face the truth about this government, our relationship to it, this system, and the relationship that we have as white people to African people as the colonizers. And looking at the fact that there's no way that white people have historically made any kinds of money or resources that has not involved this brutality and exploitation. And it's never been about pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. We stepped on the backs of African people to acquire social wealth, which now even the poorest white person, a white worker, has better conditions of living and is able to scrape together a few $1,000s more easily than an African person with a PhD in this country. So this is the colonial contradiction, and reparations calls on white people to acknowledge this and make a self-criticism and work to win other white people to support reparations and to pay reparations. And that's the work that we do as the Uhuru Solidarity Movement in those 140 cities that the chairman talks about, is actually win other white people to be a part of this movement for reparations and actually contribute material solidarity to the work, the economic and political programs of the African People's Socialist Party, not as charity, but as the return of the stolen wealth into the hands of its original producers, the African working class. And this is a message that is incredibly positive and winning, and which many white people are able to hear and able to unite with. And certainly there are some who don't agree and will ridicule or attack it, but it draws the line in the sand. And that's what's so powerful about what Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the Uhuru movement has done, is it draws the line in the sand and it gives white people the opportunity to say which side we are on. And reparations is really the ultimate question that does that.
Mr. Penny Hess, same question. Why do you believe that African people in this country, worldwide, but in this country, should get reparations? And what type of backlash as a white woman have you faced from other white people that do not agree with your point of view?
Well, thank you, yes, for raising this, and I think it's very important. I would say, first of all, that reparations are due. First of all, before Chairman Omali Yeshitela built the first tribunal for reparations to African people, that was not a word that was out there that a lot of people understood. I know that there are times way back when, from the Solidarity Committee, we might be having, a march and it says reparations, and people would say, what does that mean? What is that? But what's happened over the years, first of all, is that the analysis, the understanding of history that the chairman has brought is almost mainstream in so many ways now. You start to read it in the New York Times and other things, that it's acknowledged now that African people were assaulted by Europe, were kidnapped for hundreds of years, and the labor was stolen of African people, the labor, the freedom, the genius, and that indigenous people of this land, that genocide was committed against them, and this land was stolen, and that all over the entire world, Europe or white people had power and wealth based on the colonial domination of the people on the planet Earth. So I think that it's incredible that you can read, the New York Times had something called the 1619 Project. I mean, this whole analysis is accepted today, and it is history. It is history. And somebody who wants to be hostile to that is fine, and that does happen. But I've never seen anybody who's hostile to that who would actually debate it. They could subjectively attack it, from maybe a white nationalist point of view, but they can't they can't debate it because it's recorded history. This is recorded history. This is what is put out, and even the things that are being debated by DeSantis in Florida doesn't want that to come out in the classroom, but it's just bursting out all over because it is increasingly the accepted mainstream of the narrative of how the United States and the world as it is today came about. And the chairman was the voice that put that out. And I just wanted to say, also about the question of reparations, that, the chairman held the first tribunal in 1982, as he said, in Brooklyn, New York, that used international law to put the US government on trial. And it had testimonies from all of African experts on every subject, from sociology, psychology, education, who testified at that tribunal. And it made a huge impact. And actually the party has just published a book of the findings and the testimonies of that incredibly historic tribunal. That was very important. But I just also want to make the point that reparations, that word, is one of the things that the FBI and the US government is using to attack the party. And to me, it's because it gets to the heart of the question. They're saying that one of the things that this bogus, outrageous, completely false charges against Chairman Omali Yeshitela, and also myself and Jesse as being under the leadership of the party, is the question of reparations. And they said that all of a sudden in 2014, the chairman led a reparations tour, I think it was, and raised the question, had a petition around the question of genocide that was, quote, influenced or under the leadership or something of the Russians, which is just absolutely absurd. And I think that we see before the United Nations right now, South Africa, raising this question of genocide in terms of, the whole question of Israel and Palestinians. And, I just think that is really, really, really significant, and that the chairman has led on these questions, defining that reparations is, just deep into the whole question of why white people are where they are today versus African people, and the wealth and power that the white world has. It's not just a payback. It's not a favor. It's not a payout. It is what is owed to African people, and all the stolen labor and resources. So it's a new period. And I just think that the chairman has brought that about and led that in such a powerful way, and very exciting to see the understandings that are increasingly becoming the mainstream today.
Chairman Omali, July 29th, 2022. Can you please tell the people what that day means to you?
Well, it was the day that the United States government admitted that it was incapable of containing the struggle of our people for total liberation, for freedom. And it did that by attacking my home, attacking 7 homes and properties of the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement in pre-dawn raids here in St. Louis, where I am personally currently located, and in St. Petersburg, Florida, one of the major headquarters of our party and our movement, and where they came, as I said, pre-dawn in St. Louis. It was at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they came with flashbang grenades, armored vehicles, drones, battering rams. They knocked out windows. They demanded that me and my wife, who is a leader of our movement responsible for dealing with the reparations resources and transforming those resources into actual economic development projects in our community. They demanded that we come out with our hands up, and then they zip tied me behind my back, and my wife, who had stayed behind, trying to call people to let them know we were under attack. She could not call them because they had jammed our phones. So when she came down the stairs and opened the door, she was almost hit in the face by a drone that they had sent up into the house. At the same time, flashbang grenades were going off throughout the neighborhood. They had seized the porch of the neighbor next door. They were stationed there. As I mentioned, an armored vehicle was parked in front of my house. And they, when I came out, these white men with military gear had assault weapons pointed at me with the laser dots hitting me in the chest, like the stuff that you see in the movies. And of course, that reminded us of what they did with Fred Hampton at 4 o'clock in the morning, 1969, in Chicago. So I thought, I assumed they were going to kill me then. And they certainly wanted to let me know they could kill me then. It was a terroristic act. They had cordoned off the neighborhood so that the entire African community was blocked off. And similarly, they did this at my house. I lived in, at the time, one of the most starkly economically depressed areas in St. Louis. And so they did this in my house. And then at the same time in South St. Louis, which is where most of the white people live, they went to the Solidarity Center there, where much of the reparations work is headquartered, with the big the building with the big sign outside, indicating, reparations, that this is what this center is all about, and which has become a center that white people were gravitating toward, and where much of the economic work comes from. They went there. They knocked down battering rams. They knocked down doors there. They broke, I think, all the doors in the building. They put tape over the video cameras. They used flashbang grenades there also. They went upstairs where there was an apartment, and Jesse and his partner were living, and they put them under gunpoint and searched and took computers from them, laptops from them. They went to Penny Hess's house where she lived. She and her roommate lived. They broke windows. They used battering rams. They came in. They stole laptops. They stole cell phones, as they had done at my house. And in St. Petersburg, Florida, where we have a radio station, they went into the radio station. They took it off the air momentarily. They went into our building. They used battering rams. They knocked down doors. They totally did something like $40,000 worth of damages in both of the places. They went to the home of this young woman who had run for city council in 2017 and 2019 on reparations, along with Jesse, who ran on the reparations platform that they now claim the Russians had something to do with. They knocked on her house. The St. Petersburg police told her that somebody was breaking in her car and she needed to come out and take a look. And when she came outside, FBI agents came from all behind vans and things like that, and they assaulted her in a similar fashion that they had done to the rest of us. So this was a massive two-state attack. It was a terroristic attack. They claimed that the reason they were doing this finally is because a Russian national was going to be indicted on that same day in Russia. and that should he ever come to the United States, they would put him in jail. But in the meantime, they said that in the indictment that my name was mentioned, and the other comrades were mentioned, and they characterized us as unindicted co-defenders. That the Russian was indicted, we were four unindicted defendants, and so and which was a hell of a thing to do, because what it did was they say that you're not indicted, so you don't have legal standing. You can't go to court and say, hey, make them stop messing with us and tell us what happened, because they haven't filed any charges against you. You're unindicted. And so the whole world knows that what has happened to you. But they haven't put it out formally. The newspaper's written articles about it. I'm on a particular popular news stations and platforms, where hundreds of thousands of people know it's me, but I have no legal standing. And so that's a terrible kind of trap that they had locked us into, so that we couldn't fight them in the court because they hadn't gone to court. And so this is what happened to us. And so they claim that because we took the reparations tour, and we fought, the United Nations happened to be doing a tour in the United States, investigating the conditions of Black people in this country, and we went everywhere they went. We set up, this was in the winter, and we called it a winter tour. We set up tents, and people lived in the tents, in the snow, and what have you, following the United Nations. And we went and we testified before these United Nations hearing, and we took petitions from people, asking them to unite with what the United States was doing to us was genocide. And so they said the Russians told us to do this. They act like they don't know that years ago, Malcolm X said that it's time for us to stop taking our cases to the criminal, but we should take the criminal to court. And he was talking about the World Court, the United Nations, and things like that. They act like they don't know. In 1952, the UN Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Crime of Genocide was passed in 1948, 1952. Black people were at the United Nations saying that the United States is committing genocide against Black people. They act like they don't know that history is there. They say the Russians told us to do it. And the Russians told us to do the reparations work. They act like they don't know who Queen Mother Moore was, and all of those other people, the whole history and trajectory of our struggle, demanding reparations, demanding the fact that, you're telling us that we should get a job. Hell, you ain't paid us for what we've been doing for the last several hundred years, and you're saying getting a job is our response. And we said, no, no, no. We said 200 years is too long to owe anybody anything, right? So we had a reparations demand. They said it's something that the Russians told us to do. They said, I went to Moscow, and a non-governmental agency asked me to come to Russia to participate in an international conference dealing with the question of self-determination of peoples from around the world. I went there and I spoke at that international conference, but they act like I hadn't spoken in 2007 in Spain in an international conference where the Spanish government was one of the forces that had me come there to speak about the condition of Black people. They act like I wasn't in Ireland in something like 1982, 83, taking the results from the tribunal throughout the world, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a whole created nonsense that they've dropped on us because they cannot handle the discussion. They cannot handle the debate. And if you look at what's happening right now, today, when you have this illegitimate white nationalist state of Israel, which is nothing but a proxy for the United States, now facing genocidal charges, even though the United States is standing behind them. They've killed more than 23,000 people in just a couple of months, with 2/3 of them being women and children. And the Genocide Convention was created by white people to deal with white people. And the white people it was created to deal with was the Jews. The white people were Jews in occupied Palestine that they call Israel. But now those white people in occupied Palestine can't handle the question either. And the United States is standing with them, and the United States is doing, the United States attacked us for trying to take the reparations, the genocide demand to the United Nations as well. In fact, they stole 130,000 signatures from petitions that we had collected. 130,000 people had signed a petition that we put forward saying that the United States owed Black people reparations for the history of crimes that they had committed against us. They took that, and so they can't handle the question. So they didn't create those laws for us. They didn't create the First Amendment for me or you. They didn't create the right to vote. for me or you. They didn't create the whole issue of the United Nations and the Convention on Genocide for us, but it's there. And once you put it out there, anybody who can access it, belongs to us. And so we're saying that we want reparations. We're saying the United States is committing genocide against Black people. We want the United States to be charged with that. We want the whole world to unite with the struggle of Black people for that, and for reparations against genocide, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's nothing they can do to stop that from happening. It's been happening a long time now. Black people will be free. That's what we're fighting about, et cetera. And we've opened up a new front. When they were killing people off, being part of this movement, people said, how did you survive? Well, we open up a new front, and we open up a new front in the white community. And so that's what you see, Jesse and Penny, and then 40 some odd cities, white people who are taking the reparations demand out in the world. And it makes it impossible for them to isolate the Black liberation movement today like they did in the 1960s when they went Russia, 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 then too. And they said communists and Black militants, et cetera, and then they killed Malcolm. And you didn't see a single word, you didn't see anything that happened from the white community when they killed Malcolm. All those people say they believe in democracy and rights for Black people. Where were they? When they killed King, you didn't see, you saw hardly a murmur. When they killed Fred Hampton, what did you see? You saw very little at all. But now, in 140 some odd cities, there are white people who are connected with the struggle for reparations, struggling with us against genocide, and who recognize the historical role that Black people have made in creating this whole existing social system, and that we have a right to be free. And this is not something that's being done for Black people. We're saying that there's a world economy that exists today, that every living human being on the planet Earth today that eats, that feeds himself, that goes to school, that does anything, does it within this colonial context, a parasitic social relationship, and the freedom of white people too is dependent upon the success of the struggle against this destroyed colonialism. And that's what we're leading, and that's what scares them to death. That's what scares them to death. Mm-hmm. I know, yeah, so I hope that was helpful. Uhuru.
Woo! Mike's on.
Yeah.
Brother Jesse, briefly, real quick. The chairman talked about it, real quick, but I want to hear from you. I assume you also was arrested that same day, July 29th, 2022, correct?
I was handcuffed, but we were not technically under arrest, although.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification. Thanks for clearing it up. So I want to know what was going through your mind, when this was happening. And although you're not this other person I'm about to bring up, but I'm just being funny with it. Like I said, what was going through your mind, and after the fact, did police, the FBI, did they, take you to Burger King like they did Dylan Roof? Throw that in there. Good, I just had to throw that in there. But just tell us what was going through your mind and what happened during that event.
No, they certainly did not, and that's actually an important contrasting example that you give. It reminds me of a statement that's been made often by Lisa Davis from the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace and Reparations. She's pointed out that the way that the system treated someone like Dylan Roof, which is consistent with the way that the colonial state has treated its own citizens, if you will, white people. Historically, when we've carried out violence against African people, no white person has ever been indicted for all of the thousands of lynchings against African people that white people carried out for over 100 years in this country. And yet you have Chairwoman Penny Hess, the first white person in history to unite with the struggle for reparations to African people and work under the leadership of the African Revolution, and you have indictments. So that tells you everything you need to know about this social system and where it wants us as white people to fall, on what side of the line they want us to fall, and why this strategy of extending the African Revolution into the colonizer population behind enemy lines represents such a threat, as the chairman said. And I just want to appreciate that brilliant statement and summation from the chairman. And as far as what was going through my head that day, as the chairman said, I was in one of the locations that was raided. It was 5 o'clock in the morning. Unlike the chairman and deputy chair, Onis and Yeshitela, I was still asleep, I will admit. And myself and Amanda were awakened by the sudden just crashing of noises, the flashbang grenades going off, the battering ram coming through the door, the loudspeaker outside saying, "This is the FBI. Come out with your hands up and nothing in your hands and follow orders." And at first, and then we went down the stairs and we were handcuffed for about an hour. And you when you said we were arrested, it's interesting because, I mean, we were basically arrested. I mean, we were in handcuffs in the back of a police vehicle. But at one point, we asked them, "Are we under arrest?" And they said no, which is a very strange thing to hear when you're handcuffed in the back of a police van. But nonetheless, they did this raid for 6.5 hours at the Uhuru Solidarity Center. And what was going through my mind was, this is definitely happening at the chairman's house right now and at the Uhuru house. And I was just imagining all of the other places where I was assuming the FBI was attacking. And the other thing that was going through my mind is how grateful I am to have had the experience over the past 14 years of being under the leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party, and having been able to study the history of the counterinsurgency against the African liberation movement and understanding who and what the FBI is, and knowing what they did to Malcolm X, to Martin Luther King, to Fred Hampton, to the Black Panther Party, to the chairman, going back to the 1960s. So was I shocked that the FBI banged down the door at 5 a.m. on that particular day? Yes, but overall, it wasn't surprising that this would happen. And the other thing that I just want to say about that day is that very same day, literally a matter of hours after the last FBI armored vehicle left the street in front of the chairman's house, Chairman Omali Yeshitela called a press conference on the steps of his home with the shattered glass of the windows like still on the ground in front of the building. And in that press conference, I remember you saying, Chairman, that because we had already heard that this was about some garbage about the Russians, and the chairman said it wasn't a Russian who killed Mike Brown. It wasn't a Russian who killed George Floyd and Sandra Bland, and that no Russian had to tell African people about the conditions they face in this country and their just struggle for liberation and self-determination. And like the chairman said, it wasn't Russians who brought the chairman into the revolutionary struggle. It was America. It was this country and what this system does to African people. So that's what I would say. And I guess the last thing I'll say on this is that these charges are completely absurd and slanderous, racist, insulting, preposterous, to charge that Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who's been fighting for the liberation of African people for over 60 years, suddenly became an agent in a criminal Russian conspiracy, so-called, to sow discord in the United States. And what evidence do they provide that the chairman and the Uhuru movement engaged in what is supposed to be constitutionally protected First Amendment free speech activity, like doing a tour about reparations, like doing a petition campaign about genocide against African people, running candidates for office? It's an incredibly dangerous assault on free speech, and that we have to defend the right to anti-colonial free speech for Chairman Omali Yeshitela and for everyone, because if they take away Chairman Omali Yeshitela's right to free speech, there is no free speech, and that's why this struggle is so important.
And I have to ask you, Sister Penny Hess, as well, if you can briefly, when the FBI came to where you were, did they also take you to Burger King after. I'll say allegedly, because anyway, but tell me what that experience was like for you and what was going through your mind.
Well, I had the same thing. I mean, they broke down our door, which couldn't even close afterwards. So we couldn't, when they finally left, we had to get it fixed in order to even leave the house. But I certainly thought we were held at gunpoint in our living room, and we were not able to call or use our phones, and I assumed that that this was happening to the chairman. I mean, I assumed, because I the same thing, that I understand the counterinsurgency, what the FBI and the US government has historically done to African people and to their base when African people are fighting for power and for liberation. And, it was, it was, I can only say, I mean, it was almost in a certain way surreal, but it was real. And it was a serious, violent attack against the African People's Socialist Party. And they came to my house, which I share with another person, as the chairman said. They came to the chairman and deputy chair's home. They came to the Uhuru Solidarity Center, as well as Comrade Jesse and Amanda's home. And at the Uhuru Solidarity Center, which we had just moved in there maybe 6 months at most, or maybe almost a year. I'm trying to remember, but we hadn't been in the center, which is a very important building on a busy street in St. Louis, which the chairman said has a sign on it that says "Unity through Reparations." And everybody, it's a busy street that goes to a freeway, so it has a lot of traffic, and so many people have told us that they've seen the building and they know that building, and they're proud that there is a building like that says "Unity through Reparations" in the white community, obviously standing in solidarity with the African liberation movement. But I just think it was it was just what the chairman said. It was an attack on the African liberation movement. It was something that the chairman and the party has always put out is, does happen, will happen. It had happened to the party before in previous times and in different ways. And the chairman had been imprisoned for his political speech in the past. As he said, he spent about 5 years in prison and fighting many, many cases. And so it wasn't, in a certain way, unexpected, but it was, just to see the state, to see these corrupt, vicious politicians and wealthy people, white parasites who get to live their lives. And when African people stand up for the rights of African people, they are viciously attacked by the state. And that just makes me more committed, more determined to build this movement, which is our assignment is to win other white people, and to win as many white people as possible, to recognize that our future is under the leadership of the African liberation movement and African people and colonized people fighting against this colonial system. And, it has built our movement. Actually, it has helped us build a movement because, as the chairman said, the FBI named the vanguard, on that day. They didn't pick some white, liberal kind of group. They went to the African liberation movement and a lot of people have come forward. And I believe we met you on a tour when the chairman was on tour, following, it was a tour around putting out and building
Right.
support for the party after the raids. And, it's very powerful. It's really turning an attack into a good thing that the African People's Socialist Party and the chairman are so brilliant at doing.
I'm gonna read this off to you, and Chairman, I want you to respond to this, please. And because I found this on the Department of Justice website, all right? They put this up April 18, 2023. And it says, U.S. citizens and Russians intelligence officers charged with conspiring to use U.S. citizens as illegal agents of Russian government. Defendants sought to sow discard, spread for Russia propaganda, and interfere in elections within the United States. This is what it says on the Department of Justice website. You can still find it now. So I have to ask you, Chairman, are you a Russian spy?
Well, let me just say that discord already exists in the United States. That's why there's an Uhuru movement, because of discord. We didn't create it. We were born into it. We are a consequence of it, if you will. And it's an insult. And this charge is based on the assumption that there are enough white people who will agree and believe that Black people can't do anything on our own, that we don't have enough sense to know that we're oppressed. If some evil white person hadn't sneaked up and said something to this stupid, ignorant savage, he never would have been in motion. Black people never would do anything. No, we have agency as a people. We have fought. There's never been a time in the history that Black people have not fought for our freedom. We fought for our freedom before there was a Russian Revolution. We fought for freedom during and after the Russian Revolution. We will fight for our freedom until the freedom occurs. So this whole notion about Russia and what they're doing is feeding again on white people's ignorance, on presumed ignorance, and on white people the presumption of fears that white people have. So that they will sacrifice even their freedoms and things like that in order to fight this imaginary Russian enemy. Even as this government is denying white people all kinds of rights and resources, even as they are passing laws saying that white women should continue to be treated as pets and not have any rights at all, and things like this. And they are doing everything they can to unite the majority of white people in the struggle against an imaginary enemy, when the enemy that they have to deal with is at home. And it's always been at home. And they have, unfortunately, for a long period of time, white people have collaborated in their own oppression by uniting with the government and attacking Black people and Vietnamese and indigenous people, in this land and this is really important. Let me just say this also, that Black people, like all other human beings, to assume that it takes a Russian or some other entity to tell us that we need to be free. What happens to give me liberty or give me death, when it's uttered by white people? What happened to the notion that Black people, too, have a right to the pursuit of happiness and things like that? But they say you only have a right to pursue the happiness that we want you to have. You can buck dance. You can come down anytime we call. You can dance for us. You can play basketball. You can do all of these things that we want you to do. But at the moment you become a thinking human being, and of course the slave cannot have the right to free speech. The colonized cannot have the right. What does the slave got to talk about? Except getting out of slavery and perhaps doing something bad to the slave master and destroying the system of slavery. What does the colonized person have to talk about? Hell no, you can't have free speech. And so, and this has always been the case. I mean, in the 1960s, when Joe Biden was opposed to things like, and actively working as a senator in opposition to the Civil Rights Bill, to the Voting Rights Act, when Biden was against busing and stuff like that. I was involved in this struggle. to free black people for the rights to vote, etc. And guess what they were saying? That we were outside agitators. That somehow the struggling for the right to vote either was something that was created by the Russians again, or some outsiders, that black people don't have the ability to understand our own oppression. Well, guess what? We do, and we're gonna fight. And flashbang grenades notwithstanding, pre-dawn raids notwithstanding, and that's one of the reasons that we cannot retreat on this question. We cannot surrender on this question because we can't be the example for the other black people that at the moment stuff gets difficult, then you have to surrender and you have to your natural and human aspirations to be free. What this government has said is that we can fight to join them. We can fight to be a part of what they characterize as America. I saw something that says it's going to take 248 years for black people to catch up economically to where white people are today. 248 years, even Joe Biden won't get that old, this is just a whole, obscenity that they want to impose on black people. We're going to be free, and we're going to be free in my lifetime. That's my objective, because I'm not one of those people who run around saying, well, if we don't get it, then the next generation. I refuse to say I'm going to leave this for another generation of black people, and that's why it's important. No matter what happens, it's important for me to step forward so that other black people can see that you have a responsibility to struggle. We have a responsibility to win. We have a responsibility to be free, not only for those who have passed before us, but for those who are yet being born and those who are already here. That's our responsibility as human beings, as black people, you understand, who brought civilization to the planet Earth, right? That's our responsibility. Yeah. So we're not going to retreat and turn it over to savages, which is what is being required of us. And we look at what's happening just in a couple of months, at least 23,000 people have been killed in Palestine, with 2/3 of them being women and children. And this naked barbarism and what have you that they talk about representing the civilized world, and like they like to brag about, how do they characterize it? A rule of law being the governing thing. Yeah, law that they create and they change anytime they want to, and they make mean whatever they want it to mean. The law that it says slavery was legal. The law that changes anytime it's convenient for them to do something horrible to us, to black people, to the indigenous people. The law that allowed them to steal half of Mexico as recently as half of Mexico, 1848. The law that allowed them to take with the struggle, successful struggle of our people in Haiti. Now they take the so-called Louisiana Purchase. How the hell are you going to buy Louisiana? How are you going to buy all of this territory and the people in it, the indigenous people? This is their land, their resources, etc. And Thomas Jefferson, the pedophile, who raped that 13-year-old Sally Hemings. He's the one who negotiated this. He's this great liberal white man. That's their law. We don't want that kind of law. We believe that people can and should be free. And anyway, that's what we're about, so, and and I forgot the other thing we're guilty of, they said, is because they said that we united with the Russians against this proxy war that's been made against Russia. And it's something that's been going for more than 100 years since the Russian Revolution, and happened in 1917, 1918. All the colonial powers in the world, including the United States and Japan, invaded Russia. And because the Russian Revolution itself was influenced by the struggle against colonialism happening every place around the world. So this was the world that they've been trying to stop from coming into existence for a long period of time. So we're looking at a contest between the past of colonialism and white power domination of the rest of the world, and the future of liberation. And we're on the side of the future. And you can't stop that. No matter what you do, you cannot stop the future. It happens. Uhuru.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Chairman, I hear you, right? I hear you. And so we got that clear. You're not a spy for Russia. Thank you for clarifying that. But this is the FBI. I want to make that clear. This is the FBI. the most powerful agency in the country, probably the world, with the most resources, right? I want to say that again. It's the FBI, the biggest gang in the world, right? So I'm saying to myself, why would they just make this stuff up? You probably answered, but again, I'm just, wording it a different way. Why would they just make this stuff up to come at, the Uhuru movement? They can't, again, they got all the resources, unlimited resources. Some of this stuff has to be true, right? That they're saying, and the stuff I read off. They can't just be making this up.
So it's interesting that they haven't charged us with stealing anything, shooting anybody, robbing anything, creating any kind of there are people that if you don't know them personally, you see them all the time, who's stealing money from black people on social media on a regular basis, claiming to be helping black people. They don't get attacked, anything like that. I tell you why. They attack us because and say the Russians did because they can't tell the truth. To tell the truth is to say that here are some black people who we've told that the only way that you should be able to exercise, to advance your cause is through voting, through elections. We told them that. And we act like we were for them when they were being lynched and being bombed for trying to vote. And this is extremely important because, they said that the FBI got us to run candidates around reparations. But the truth of the matter is nobody in the history of this country fought for the vote more than black people did. Joe Biden didn't. The FBI didn't. It was us. It was we. It was our children who were being bombed in churches in Birmingham and stuff, Birmingham and things like that. So we've always been there. But they can't. So they've gone beyond that point now where they can say, we're killing them because they're niggas. We're arresting them because they're black people who want to be free. They can't tell the truth. And so what they have to do is concoct the reason for why they're doing it. To tell the truth is to expose themselves to the whole world that they're trying to win now, to unite with them in an era where you see a decline in the efficacy and the viability of white power. The whole world sees this stuff happening right now. They see a collapse of white power. They see the growing loss of influence of white power around the world. So they can't tell the truth. And so they have to manufacture, and it's only the oppressed. So sometimes you never know. You can't know. The FBI say this, I say that. So how do you go about trying to make a judgment about who's closer to the truth or who's telling the truth? Because truth is concrete. And so what you do is you investigate the history of the process. And historically, look at how the FBI has acted. Garvey, that's how J. Edgar Hoover, they founded themselves attacking Garvey. Look how they killed Malcolm. Nobody debates the fact that what they did to Martin Luther King, how they even tried to get him to commit suicide. I didn't try to get King to commit suicide. I worked with King. So look at the history and then look at my history. Look at the history of black people, generally speaking, who are trying to be free. Look at what the FBI has done to black people and with black people trying to be free. So you might not have been there when this started or that started, but you know that history. So if you don't have anything else, you see the historical trajectory that's involved in this relationship that black people have to the FBI. And so I think that's really important for us to recognize. And they cannot tell the truth, and we cannot be free. They cannot tell the truth and survive, and we cannot survive unless the truth is told. You see? So there's an objective interest that we have in truth, and there's an objective interest that they have in lying.
Yes,
that's why there's Facebook jail.
That's right.
That's why they do everything to make sure that the truth cannot be told by us. Because what say the truth will set you free.
I know all about that.
Yeah,
I know about brother.
So they cannot maintain slavery and oppression with the truth, and we cannot win freedom from slavery and oppression without the truth. They need a lie, and we need the truth. Objectively speaking, that's just the way it is. Yeah.
So, thank you for that, Chairman. Brother Jesse, Sister Penny, I want to know, yes or no? are you guys spies for Russia? I mean, that's what this is the FBI. The FBI. This is what they say. You know, I mean, like I said, surely they again they got unlimited resources. They should know what they're talking about, right? They're not going to just spend taxpayer money and all this, just cause, right?
I believe it was the FBI or J. Edgar Hoover that wrote in the 1960s that the Black Panther Party was the greatest internal threat to the stability of the United States government since the Civil War. And the fight for against colonialism and for national liberation of African people is the weakest link of the US. This is, this goes to the heart of the contradiction. And that's why the African liberation movement is the first to be attacked, and why the chairman Omali Yeshitela is under attack. And that's why we are, not because, any other reason, except that we play a role in the strategy of the African People's Socialist Party to win the liberation of African people. And that includes sending white people out as the voice of Black power in white face. That's what we do, into the white community to take this message. And it's powerful. It's winning. I mean, just so much of the ideas, as we were talking about before, of today that are prevalent today are the result of the work of Chairman Omali Yeshitela. The understanding that it's colonialism, the understanding of reparations. And this is why, the chairman just said it so eloquently. They can't hear the truth, but the party must tell the truth. That's what it is based on. And I would just say also that, the chairman teaches us daily that this system is in incredible crisis. It can't continue to stand. It has no authority in the world. Even what we're seeing, right now with this whole stand of all these countries are joining in this thing to take to the United Nations around the question of genocide, and it is a stand against the United States and everything that it represents. And and that this crisis of imperialism is deepened every day by the work of Chairman Omali Yeshitela, because he exposes it and he organizes the African working class, to fight against this colonial domination and to be free and liberated. And this is the world that we see, fighting for. This is what the Palestinian people are fighting for. This is what, the indigenous people are fighting for, power over their lives. This is the inevitable course of history that we see before us. And Chairman Omali Yeshitela has made this possible, has created. I shudder to think about what the world would be like today without Chairman Omali Yeshitela in it to lead this struggle. But this is the ultimate fight back, and it's winning. This is African people winning. I believe that. I see that every day. The oppressed and colonized and African people are going to be free. This is what is the struggle, the ultimate struggle that is taking place on the planet right before us. And I'm very honored to be on the side of the winners, on the side of African people and the oppressed and colonized peoples on the planet Earth. And we have the ability to do that as the colonizers under the leadership of the African Revolution. So this is a profound period in history that and has been instrumental in that, Uhuru.
Let me just say that one of the things that's problematic for our oppressors is that for the longest period of time, they've have African people locked into the assumption that we can only make progress through the Democratic Party. And for a long period of time, that wasn't the case. I mean, there was a time, in the 60s where 50s and 60s were fighting for civil rights and voting rights, et cetera, et cetera. At one point, the Democratic Party, became the party. But by the time we won universal suffrage, what coincided with that was the murder of leaders of our community. The Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965, the same year they killed Malcolm X. In 1968, they killed Martin Luther King. 1969, the massive assault on Black revolution throughout this country and much of the world. This stuff was going on. So the Voting Rights Act, for universal suffrage, lost its significance to Black people because we couldn't take our own program into arena. We only program we could take was white people's program through the Democratic Party. And that people, criticize Black people because you don't vote, because they got nothing to vote for. There's nothing on the agenda. Malcolm's program is not there, where he talks about Black nationalism, what that means in terms of politics, economics, and stuff. They killed Malcolm, so that's not there. King's program, a poor people's campaign that was going to elevate the condition of all the impoverished people in this country, it's not on there. They killed him. The only program you got is Joe Biden's program, the Democratic Party's program. And so they've been stuck with this thing of Black people, not assuming that there's an alternative. And one of the reasons they assume they don't have an alternative is because in our own community, they put these forces in leadership positions. So they didn't just kill Malcolm and they didn't just kill King. They put forth a whole crew, a whole slew of forces who act as white power in blackface. And so you have them in your community where you are. You have them all over the places that you have this white power in black faces. So there is an assumption that Black people have no alternative except the Democratic Party. But what the African People's Socialist Party has done, because we're the only organization in this country that's engaged in practical struggle to destroy colonialism. I'm not talking about colonialism is bad. I'm talking about the negation of colonialism is something we do on a daily basis. That's why we got more than 50 some odd economic institutions that we're developing so that we can negate the influence, the power. We call it dual and contending power. We're creating power. We're creating the new society even as we're protesting this society. So we have economic ventures. We've had furniture store in Philadelphia and in Oakland, California, where every time thousands of people have gone through there. And what they get every time they've gone, they heard a message of reparation. This is about 25, 30 years this has been going on. And this is part of what's become a problem for them. We have economic programs everywhere. We built basketball courts in the most economically deprived sector in St. Louis. That we spent $160,000 just a couple of years ago to create this basketball court there. And so we are doing, there is an alternative. That's what we represent. People can see an alternative. You don't need the government, the Uncle Sam, the oppressor, to be able to feed, clothe, and house us. We can do it ourselves, and that's the problem that they have as well. That's what we take out politically. That's the struggle against colonialism. You don't spend all your time trying to make white people like you. If you want white people to like you, get some power.
Correct. Chairman, I hear you, right? I hear you. I'm listening. It sounds good. It feels good. However, I have to say this, that FBI has a 97% conviction rate. Let me say that again, sir. That FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigations, has a 97% conviction rate. Mm-hmm. From my understanding, you guys are scheduled to go to trial, I believe, next month in February, correct? And yes, and 25% of cases that go to trial at FBI, only 25% of them actually get thrown out. Those numbers don't really work in your favor, Chairman. Those numbers don't really work in Jesse's favor. Those numbers don't really work in Sister Penny's favor. Currently, they are basically saying, "Oh, you're facing anywhere from 10 to 15 years, if I'm correct." For a young man like yourself, Chairman, if you was sentenced or convicted, because again, they got a 97% conviction rate, what does that do for you in a sense, or how much of a blow is that for you? Are you worried about going to prison, giving those numbers, and that I just gave off, and the FBI having all these unlimited resources?
Well, first of all, let me just tell you that I hate prison. I've been to prison. I've been to virtually almost every prison in the state of Florida. I've been in and out of jail since the 1960s. That's what being part of this movement. In fact, in the 1960s, it was a badge of honor. We used to boast about how many times we've been locked up and stuff like that. I don't do that anymore. I don't think that's something that I'm calling on people to do. I mean, I want everybody to try to stay out of jail, stay out of prison as much as possible. But the fact is that would represent a life sentence for me. But the thing is, let me just say that somebody asked Malcolm X one time, "What is the wage of freedom?" or something. I think he said death, and it's nothing that we play with. And so what the FBI has, the United States has 100% rate of slavery. So don't fight against it because that's what they've done. What if Nat Turner? There was no Russians there for Nat Turner and Denmark Vesey and Harriet Tubman and all the people who have to fight against this horrible social system. So you don't say, well, because they're so powerful, they've done this and that, let's be a slave forever. You don't say we'll be a slave because they have such a great conviction and oppression rate of oppression. There's the largest prison population on the planet Earth is in this country right here. And you got almost 1 million African, you have more African people in prison in the United States than there are people in some countries in Africa. So we know about the horrors and terrors and their capability of creating crimes against the people of the world. And we see that in microcosm when you look at what's happening in Palestine right now. For the Palestinians, they killed 23,000 people, more than that. Money buried under rubble, thousands buried under rubble. They've destroyed hospitals so that babies can't be born. They've done things to affect the pregnancy of women there, etc. So they say, oh, well, they got all this stuff. You don't do anything. They say that's the reason we have to do something. That's the reason we have to fight them, because they've railroaded black people. They killed Malcolm X. They killed Martin Luther King. And they destroyed the movement that Marcus Garvey led. And just because they got such a conviction rate, hell, they created the court. If I create the court, if I create the system, I'd have such a conviction rate as well. If criminals are in charge of the law, then the law will act criminally against people who are trying to do the right thing. So we just have to do the right thing. And I don't want to coin a phrase because Spike Lee would get, upset with me about that. But that's our responsibility, to be free. Our responsibility is to be free. Let me say this. It's not to say the same thing as saying that we are without fear. You can't be a human being and normal without having fear. But there's a difference in fear and cowardice. And at the moment you allow your fear to be something that will make it impossible, make you unwilling to do what has to be done for the people, for freedom, then that's cowardice. And so they can frighten me. I mean, 5 o'clock in the morning when they knocking your doors down and grenades going off, et cetera, it can scare the hell out of you momentarily, startle you. You know their history. When I walked down those stairs and I saw those dots in my chest, I remembered Fred Hampton. They knew I would think about Fred Hampton when they put it in those dots in my chest. They were saying, we'll kill you, nigga. And I am determined to exist, and our movement has to exist. So I don't care anything about the FBI's success in framing up black people, of killing black people. In fact, their success in their murder, their success in their locking up black people is exactly why we have to fight.
Yes.
Jesse. Yeah, it's cool to publicly talk about reparations, right? It's cool to speak your mind, have an opinion, and I respect that personally. What you stand for. But are you truly ready, as a white person? Are you really truly willing to risk your freedom and the Uhuru movement and what you believe in. Because again, the FBI, like I said to the chairman, has a 97% conviction rate. So are you truly willing and ready to do 10 to 15 years if it came to that?
And I don't, these are questions, I know that you're devil's advocate and stuff like that, but
I'll take it out.
I mean, because the issue is what black people that are willing to do that. You're talking about as a white guy, are you ready to do this? What Negroes are ready to do this? You understand? So I mean, right. It's just nobody volunteers to do this. We volunteer to struggle to be free, and I have great confidence in Jesse and Penny Hess. Penny Hess has been in this movement since 1976. Longer than most of the people in the movement have been alive. You haven't even heard some of the stories of terror and stuff that we've existed. This is just a little, blip right now that people are aware of what happened on July 29th. Jesse Nevel has been here for a long time. Jesse Nevel not only been here for a long time, Jesse is somebody who's opened up an entirely new front from the Uhuru movement. Jesse is Jewish, and he's making a struggle to undermine Zionism, to win Jews in opposition to Zionism and the illegitimate white national state of Israel. That's what the party is doing. That's what the Uhuru movement is doing. So the FBI, the IDF, all of these horrible kinds of forces that kill people who try to be free, they're against everything that we do. They're against Jesse Nevel, they're against Penny Hess, they're against me, they're against the Uhuru movement. And those are just, if they weren't, then you wouldn't be involved in a struggle. You wouldn't call it struggle. It's precisely because they're working to keep that from happening. Yeah. You'd be a walk in the park if they weren't. Yeah.
Correct about that. Yeah. Correct about that. Yeah. So I will rephrase that, Chairman. Thank you. Brother,
you can leave it there.
But I do want to hear real quick from Brother Jesse. Is he, just saying, knowing that he's facing this, given the numbers that I said, I said the 97% conviction rate by the Fed. Are you willing to put it out on the line? Your freedom, if possible. Your life, if possibly, as Chairman, as being a long time freedom fighter, activist, as you always mentioned Malcolm and Martin, and they sacrificed their life. So I'm just, saying as a brother Jesse, as of now, the time that you guys are facing, I'm sure you guys will prevail, but it still would be a little bit scary, maybe not, but just saying, man, I'm facing false charges, and just knowing how they don't play fair and they're dirty, but still they can still convict me for something I didn't do. So I just wanted to know Jesse's point of view on that.
Real well, I really want to salute the chairman and the leadership of the chairman and the courage that the chairman represents, and just am humbled and strive to emulate that and in every possible way, and just unite with what the chairman said, that the struggle of African people, the struggle of the oppressed and colonized peoples of the world to overturn this colonial system and by extension to create the basis for the liberation of all humanity is much bigger than any individual. It's much bigger than me. It's much bigger than my life or whatever else. And that I am committed to go where the African Revolution needs me to go. That's what it means to be a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee, and to unite with what it means to fight for reparations and genuine solidarity with the African Revolution. And I also am I know those numbers. I've seen worse numbers than that, and they don't bother me because I am very confident that we will prevail. Not just because I've read all the legal documents hundreds of times and I know that they're complete BS, because it's true that within the colonial court system, like the chairman said, they control it. They control the court system. So within the colonial court system, they can get away with anything. But the principle that the chairman has put out time and time again is that we will win in the courts because we will win in the streets. We're building a movement. We're building a hands-off Uhuru anti-colonial free speech movement, a counteroffensive to push back against this under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, and I'm very confident that victory is certain. And I believe in the inevitability of the victory of the African Revolution, which means I'm convinced that there's a 100% chance that at some point in the future, the FBI won't even exist, because the colonial mode of production will have been overturned and African people will be free, and all of the oppressed peoples of the world will have self-determination. And that's the world that I want to be a part of and I want to fight for. And that's what I would say about that.
You have to say there are other white people fighting against the FBI who are not even progressives and stuff like that. I mean, they being investigated by the U.S. Congress, a sector of the U.S. Congress and what have you. This invincibility of the FBI. I mean, there's a contradiction that's happened among the white settlers themselves, among the oppressors that relates to the FBI and et cetera. So this thing about their conviction rate, I don't even know what that means. I really don't know. I mean, that's not something you can ever take into consideration. You want to be free. I mean, people wouldn't be enslaved and colonized if they had the power. It's those who have the power who enslave and colonize people. So, the question really is there a price that you're unwilling to pay to be free? Can you be frightened enough to be a slave? Can a conviction rate of a criminal entity organization succeed in keeping you from fighting for your freedom? Does the reputation and rather the conviction rate of the FBI outweigh the requirement for freedom of Black people? Those are the kinds of questions that make sense to me. I mean, it's not just the FBI, it's NATO, it's the CIA. In the 1960s, we had a situation where the CIA had its own program attacking us. The military intelligence had its own various entities from the military attacking us and what have you. So that's what you're up against. You're up against the whole colonial state apparatus. That's happened every time people have fought for freedom any place in the world. It's not going to be any different here.
Chairman, I'm going to ask one more question, sir, and I'm going to give you the floor to lead us out of here. But Jesse and Penny, you can feel free to answer as well, because I want to know. And usually, again, as I stated earlier, when you're someone that's a true grassroots activist, a revolutionary in your community, and the power that be see that, the first thing they try to do is buy you off. Usually, in most cases, try to buy you off or get you to side with them. When that doesn't work, they try to go after your livelihood, right? And then after that, they'll try to falsely throw you in prison for a crime you didn't do, which you guys are basically facing now, being falsely accused of something that you guys did not do. And then when that doesn't work, they try to assassinate you, as we see. So I want to know, have any of you guys fear that? Have any of you guys, not saying fear, ever faced any type of situation where you felt your life was on the line coming from the government?
A number of occasions. There have been assassination attempts made against me. A number of occasions, over the decades, many assassination attempts. But people have, fired rifles from snipers, and people have, there are a number of occasions that's happened, and, you're right. So they will attempt to buy you off, and they will attempt to frighten you off. They will jail you, and then they would kill you. So, they would do those kinds of things, but they can't do everything they want to do. And part of that is based on, the political conditions, political circumstances, and how you move. And we try to live righteous lives, among other things. So it's not easy for them. Like I said, they never charged us with killing anybody, shooting anybody, stealing anything, drugs, or anything like that. They can't. That's not who we are. We're freedom fighters. And they know that. And so they have to concoct these ridiculous stories and whatever. They got all the resources, like you just said. So if they got all these resources, then why haven't those resources put them in a situation where they accuse me of bank robbery, or they accuse me of drugs, or they accuse me of anything like that. They can't. And so the real question before us, and the one that I'm hoping that this discussion we're having now contributes to, is the people. The people are the fundamental thing in all this equation. The attack on us in part is to keep us from the people. So the people don't have an opportunity to hear what it is that we have to say. That's one of the things that makes some of these questions a bit disturbing that we've just gone through. Because the people are critical to everything. And the people, and my job in part is to help the people understand that we can win. We don't have to be slaves. We don't have to be slaves. My job is to tell people the basis for our oppression, that there's nothing abnormal and wrong with Black people, that if we are impoverished and if we are faced with, even what's characterized criminal activity in our communities, because there's a foreign and alien power that came to us. That if we can talk about reparations in the United States, we're talking about reparations in the United States because Africa came under attack, because they attacked Africa. I'm not somebody who voluntarily came here. Black people and the indigenous people are the only people who didn't come to this country looking for a better way of life. We lost a better way of life as we came here at gunpoint. So, I mean, that's the reality of our existence here. And we've been fighting ever since then, not just me. Didn't start now. They framed up Garvey and they framed and everybody. They've assassinated people up and down the line, not just here. They murdered Lumumba. They overthrew Nkrumah. They killed even Arafat. They murdered Arafat. This is the way they function, because they can't function any other way. They cannot have democracy. They don't believe in democracy. They use words like democracy, and they use words like 97% conviction rate to terrorize people into accepting slavery and things like that. So we have the revolution. When we fight, we win. And so the fact is that somebody told them this was a Negro general, because they've given the U.S. military a completely black face. The Pentagon, the ones who are responsible for AFRICOM, the ones who over the so-called Joint Chiefs of Staff, black generals, who are the ones who are doing that. But this Negro, Lloyd Austin, when he was in occupied Palestine, that he called Israel, he told the Israelis that what you are doing now is creating a strategic defeat, because everything that you're doing to the people in Palestine now is creating more revolutionaries, creating more forces who will fight you and who will win, especially because of the resistance that they exemplify. That's what Malcolm X is. Who do we talk about? We don't talk about sellouts that we want to remember. We remember Malcolm. We remember Marcus Garvey. We remember Martin Luther King. We remember Fred Hampton. We remember revolutionaries, many of whom have died in the process. We remember Sundiata Acoli. We remember Assata Shakur. Those are the names that ring, with us. Nat Turner, people who fought and won. And so they may have some temporary success, tactical success, but it's a strategic defeat, because we will be victorious. Our people will be victorious. And if I have anything to do, I'm going to play a role in making that happen. So however that has to occur, So I want to thank you for sharing this platform with us and giving us an opportunity to speak to your base. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Chairman, if you have any last words, you got the floor. You can close it out.
Well, those were the words. Thank you so much. Thank you, comrade. Yeah, we will win, and Black people will be free. We have a responsibility to be free. It's irresponsible. It will be the most irresponsible act we can engage in, is to continue to submit to slavery, to submit to colonialism. It's our responsibility to be free. And that's what we are fighting for. And I'm glad that you have opened this door to us, because one objective, of course, we engage in this war of ideas. And they want to make it impossible for us to engage in this war of ideas. And I want to just tell you, Comrade Ty, you can't fall victim to this BS of journal objectivism, because there's no such thing in the real world. We believe in freedom, and there's no question there. We don't believe there are two sides to the issue of being free. There are no two sides to that question. There are no two sides to oppression. There's an oppressor and there's an oppressed. And the question is, which side are you on? And my truth is the truth that ends this colonial slavery. And I think that's what our responsibility is. That's what the white people do. That's what their mediums do. That's what this guy who owns Facebook and the guy who owns X, Twitter, and all of those things, they fight to preserve this existing social system. And so does an FBI with a 97% conviction rate. That's what they do. What do we do? That's the question. And our objective, our responsibility is to be free. And our arguments have to win our freedom. Our arguments have to convince Black people this is the way we have to go, that we have to have the courage to resist, and not that they got 97% conviction rate. Who the hell cares about their conviction rate? We're going to bust the Douglas their asses.
And on that note, Chairman Omali, I appreciate you, Brother Jesse, Sister Penny. Thank you for coming on here, coming on my platform. And, thank you guys so much and giving all the knowledge and bringing truth and enlightenment. And I appreciate you guys. Love you guys so much. And, to victory next month. Thank you.
Uhuru, thank you.
Relentless.
Yes.
Uhuru.
Have a good night.
Thank you. You too, comrade.
Thank you.